I would like to start by acknowledging the Dharawal people as the traditional owners of the land on which Nantian Institute resides, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the various lands and waters on which we now have the privilege to enjoy. I'd also like to recognize the triple gem of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Together, they make up the lineage, philosophy, and community of Buddhism that I embrace to deepen our engagement, reflection, and scholarly investigation. It is my privilege to welcome our speakers today. I must say I'm so grateful to our speakers, Venerable Miao, Guang, and Venerable Zhi Yue, for missing lunch to be with us. And Venerable Lobsang, Drolma, if she's here, for missing her sleep to be with us. So, thank you. I think for the sake of the Dharma, many people are making so many big sacrifices, and that's the Bodhisattva spirit. So without taking any more time, I'd like to pass the floor back to Xiaoyan.
Thank you, Venerable Juewei. I will start by introducing Venerable Miao Guang, although I'm sure a lot of us in the audience know her pretty well. So Venerable Miao Guang graduated from UNSW here in Sydney. And she went on to do her master's in Guang University. As we know, she was the personal interpreter for Venerable Master Hsing Yun. She's now on the board of directors of Guangshan and also is the Deputy Chancellor and Director of the International Affairs Department at FGS Institute of Humanistic Buddhism. Venerable Miao Guang is also the Honorary Fellow at Nantian Institute and adjunct professors to the universities in the Guang Consortium. Today, she will speak to us on Agentic AI in Buddhist text translation. And the floor is yours, Venerable Miao Guang. I will stop share here.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join the special interest group organized by Venerable Juewei and your wonderful teams. Well, I'm just here to share some progress and ideas of our works at Guangshan. So some of them may look a bit under progress because they are still ongoing. And so I hope today it's just a chance to chip in some ideas as to where we are headed at Guangshan. Okay. And so can you see my PowerPoint? Okay, good. Yes, I think I'm also experiencing a tiny bit of tech issues. AI is progressing so fast that computers aren't able to keep up. So every time we log into Zoom, you see a lot of lags. And so I'll try to minimize the content that I need to show today so my computer doesn't just blow up or die down. Okay. And so Agentic AI and Buddhist text translation is one of our fields of work. I wouldn't say so much in terms of research because we're actually doing some work regarding the application of AI and translation. And so moving all the way to last year, I think we've really explored the topic of AI in Buddhist text translation. But, you know, with the world of technology, you know, 1 month can mean a whole lifetime. And so this year, we can really see the thriving of agentic AI to help us work with large Buddhist corpuses. And so today what I would like to share is what we have done and some of the ideas we're bringing together and maybe share some of the pros and cons of where we're headed in terms of the project that we're actually doing. Okay. And so we're very happy to see that half of the Buddhist circle is embracing AI. The other half is still testing and unsure. But nevertheless, from the Guangshan perspective, especially from the founder of Guangshan, Venerable Master Hsing Yun, he's always valued the need to keep up with the steps of time. So this is what he says. He says, Buddhism values science and technology. Just as the Buddha frequently used analogies and expedient means to guide sentient beings, and such methods can actually be seen as a technological approach to spreading the Dharma. So you would imagine creating a virtual world in human minds by telling stories. And that virtual world is becoming so real and vivid with the aid of technology today. And so we would like to follow on his vision. And so continuing from what he says, to modernize Buddhism, it is essential to adapt to social and technological developments. That is why from as early as 60 years ago, he used projectors, televisions, computers, and the internet, and even distance learning to facilitate Dharma propagation and to make it more convenient. Therefore, our attempt to bringing agentic AI, first of all, just a brief overview of what that is. What is agentic AI in Buddhist text translation? Well, first of all, by agentic, it really refers to AI systems that operate like our assistants, automatic helpers or agents. So they don't just answer one question. It's no longer a chat box scenario where you throw in a chunk of text and it gives you something in return, or you answer a question. And instead, they now carry out multi-step processes in very powerful ways. They adapt to the goals we set, keep track of our progresses, and even generate new tasks to reach an outcome. So it's really thinking alongside us to help us solve problems that arise. And so when we combine this with translation, this means an AI system that can do the following things. It can plan for us. It can execute that plan. It will refine the problems that arise and really manage large translation outflows. So not just translate line by line. That's no longer what we're looking for. And so this is the progress that we've come up so far. So the agentic AI capabilities for large Buddhist corpus translation includes so far the 8 steps. Well, first of all, it needs to have the ability to handle large, massive corpuses. So we're looking at Venerable Master Hsing Yun's complete works, summing up to 30 million characters. And to my surprise, when I met with the Chinese editorial team last week, they're saying there are actually millions more characters to be published in terms of what Venerable Master Hsing Yun wrote. So it's a growing corpus. So we're going to have to deal with this growing corpus as it grows. That's the first thing. And secondly, in order to ensure standardized expressions and terminology, it needs to execute glossary-enforced translation. So we have a set of glossary, and how do we get this AI agent to run through the entire corpus to ensure that we are using it consistently and to detect mistakes or errors and inject the corrections wherever needed. So it's going to have to really claw through large amounts of text to help us identify the corrections and the errors. And thirdly, how do we structure a consistent output style in terms of dictionary style, Venerable Master Hsing Yun's tone, or Guang canon, Guang Dazhangjing, right, canonical style? We will have to set it and continue to refine it, even according to the era and the time that this canon is setting. That's the third one. And fourth, we have to make sure the interoperability within parallel corpora. So for example, we are now matching the works in Chinese, in English, and then we're bringing in Sanskrit, Pali, and with the Foguangshan community, we're also matching it now to French, to Spanish, to Portuguese, to aid in the effective translation and output of the works in other language groups. And so it needs to be able to work across different parallel corpora once we've built it. And number 5, how do we develop a brain, an agentic brain that helps us review or correct these loops as we work piece by piece, title by title, or topic by topic. And number 6, how does it inject scholarly metadata? For example, published reliable reference to upgrade our translation, especially when we're translating academic works, which are also included in either master's works or the Foguangshan canon. And citation automation. That's another fun thing that we've been working with. And so Venerable Juewei and her team at the HBC have been really assisting us and working with us to translate academic papers in Humanistic Buddhism. Therefore, number 6 would be vitally important to make sure that the works we produce are of academic quality. And number 7, this is in the future. How do we execute topic clustering? and cross-referencing, so that users can begin to cluster topics of their interest and access this information across different language groups effectively. And number 8, basically the usual chatbot is what we're going to set as a part of our project. And so where are we now at Guangshan in headquarters? Out of the 8 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, and number 6 are now in progress. And that is, as I share later, step 5, 7, and 8, it will be something that we're planning as of now, but have not put it into trial. And so to break down the steps by introducing the examples that we're using and we're working on at Guangshan. So massive corpus handling, you're looking at loading and segmenting entire Buddhist canons in different language groups under perhaps published Buddhist canons into manageable units. For example, fascicle, sutra, or paragraph. Okay, we are really looking at topic clustering by, first of all, establishing a procedure for massive corpus handling. And what it will do, it will automatically chunk long texts. It will it will track our progress and maintain document level context to make it easier for us to manage. So the works we're working on will be to translate the complete works of Venerable Master Hsing Yun into English at this point. And so this corpus is categorized into 12 categories so far. And up to date, it has been published in Chinese in 395 volumes, which is more than 30 million characters. And as I said before, they're still ongoing. So as we translate, how do we actually make these chunks manageable? So one of the great works that is being done by the Guangshan International Translation Center, the official translation center under Guangshan, under Venerable Yi Chao and Venerable Miao for 30 years. Tremendous effort, amazing work. So they've begun with single titles written by Master Hsing Yun, either as biography, doctrinal teachings, his diaries, and maybe his manuals in terms of how to propagate the Dharma or practice the Dharma, are all divided into these single titles. And so the doctrinal thinkings, the exegetic works, such as this particular one, Humanistic Buddhism, holding on to the original intent of the Buddha, are also included to help us begin to categorize the topics and the genres. And some of the easier readings, for example, Buddha-Dharma Pure and Simple, we first need to translate them into English by following existing rules and examples, and then we add this into the corpora. And so one of the good news is, if you're familiar with Guangshan in Taiwan, you perhaps have been accessing Venerable Master Hsing Yun's Chinese website, 星云大师全集. And so next month, we're going to launch the English edition of the complete works of Venerable Master Hsing Yun. So that is our attempt to really manage the large corpus together. And so integrating all the works done by the Translation Center, Buddhist Light Publishing USA, and at the Institute of Humanistic Buddhism and other translators, we will now offer to our readers and devoted followers of Venerable Master Hsing Yun a reliable and integrated source of his works. But you will see behind this, we are at the same time managing these large corpora in the future to actually inject further or develop AI functions. Okay, so you will see in the start, it's going to be a very simple database, 12 categories divided by titles. So you can just click into each title in a more manageable way. And so what you're reading is authentic Master Hsing Yun's work, not processed by AI at this point. So each chapter looks like this, exactly as the Chinese, and we'll even include the biography and chronology of Venerable Master Hsing Yun's life for academic research and so on. And so once we're done, we'll also be including Japanese, Spanish, Portuguese versions. And so this is the first part. And the future large corpus would be the Guangshan Buddhist Canon, a huge work which might extend into our future lives. But if we lay the foundation well, in our next life when we come back, perhaps you can continue in a more effective way. Okay. And secondly, glossary enforced translation includes terms such as Rulai, which is Tathagata, or Kong, whether as Shunyata or emptiness. And so we need to compare drafts to glossary to catch inconsistencies and retranslate them. And so building onto Venerable Master's works from as early as 1962, we've collected works from the Dictionary of Buddhist Terms, or even the bilingual Buddhist series on sutras, scriptures, as well as explanations of doctrines. And then added to the commonly used terminology at Foguangshan, this is the Glossary of Humanistic Buddhism, a term that's being recognized by the world, especially in the Foguangshan and Buddhist light community. So we are now developing a kind of consistency through the publications of this glossary. And even more, the Foguang Dictionary that we hope to introduce by the end of this year, the digital version will enable an even more reliable set of Buddhist glossary in terms of dictionary entries. And so we have a very strong background in terms of consolidating the large corpus with the support of these glossaries. And now we ask AI to develop that consistency by following these existing data sets. And thirdly, how do we manage a structured dictionary style output? For example, how do you refer to terms like the 5 skandhas? How do you refer to terms such as the Pratitya Samuppada? So we're producing entries in the style of Foguang Dictionary, inspired by the Princeton Dictionary, by the Mochizuki, even by the Digital Dictionary of Buddhism, maintained by Dr. Charles Mueller in Tokyo. And so these will provide very strong technical equivalents for us to ensure that the desired style, either in academic output or in canonical output or in Master Hsing Yun output, are all designed and followed by this style. Okay, so we had the HB reader before. When you click on a word, for example, here you see 词名. Right? What is 词名 in English? And so with the help of Alex Amos, he developed the HB reader for us to consistently output a reliable set of glossaries in the process of our translation. So now we're actually migrating these standardized sets over to Agentic AI for it to perform this task on a large or massive scale. Okay. So 词名 has Chinese, pinyin, and the dictionary references, for example, whether it's a verb, the literal meaning, and the domain, whether it's actually coming from classical Chinese, modern Chinese, or HB glossary. Right? These are all integrated into our data sets, and then further injected into different parts of Master Hsing Yun's work with where these terms appear. So this is a chance for us to assess the consistency or the accuracy of these dictionary style data sets. Okay. And so the Foguang Dictionary is the ongoing project as before. And so if we look at the format, basically it is divided into 5 main parts. So our goal is to make sure we stay consistent and loyal to the content. And so this will aid largely in the future when we ask Agentic AI, right, to perform reliable research and dependable and accurate output. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that for now. And for those who are interested in our trial digital version, last year we released 5,000 entries. And in the end of this August, we're going to release another 10,000 for everyone to trial and see. So it's actually in Chinese and English with hyperlinks to headwords and references and so on. Okay. But given the limited time, I'm going to go to number 4, the interoperability within parallel corpora. So what does that mean? Okay. First of all, we need to make sure that the canonical references that AI is generating is not just mere creation. It needs to come from published translations by the works done by scholars around the world. So as we progress through the Foguangshan Dictionary project, we actually collected all of this published sutra quotes. And so in order to provide a more reliable reference, and once we collected, and so this is what we see, okay? Let's go to the next slide. So as a parallel corpus, this is what you see. This is where the work goes in. We have to spend a lot of time matching the text clusters across canons, and in terms of master's works, across language groups and different versions of translations. And we hope to keep all of this for better sets of comparison and enhance accuracy. So this is done by Dharma Drum and even Sutta Central. Sutta Central is working really well to generate a desired layout, either whether you like the original text on the left and the translation on the right, or a line-by-line format. So you can see these technologies are all very, very ripened now. They're actually very easy and accessible to use. And the SAT, Daizokyo from Tokyo University, what they do now is they enable you to mouse over a term, and over the right, you will see it immediately leads to that dictionary entry, right, for easier reference and reading. So very handy tools. And for Guang AI, as part of what we are developing right now, it would also follow all of these rules to make sure that the terms you see here are translated based on the data sets and the translation memories we feed to it. So I probably have 2 more minutes left, so I'm just going to go quickly over what we're sharing. So number 5, in terms of agentic review, in the future, how do we, after the first translation, run automated passes to check whether it violates the glossary or whether the doctrinal concepts are missing or incorrectly paraphrased in the generated works? It will flag it, then automatically regenerate those sections. And number 6, scholarly metadata and citation automation. How do we actually insert the Taisho, the CSCD, or the PTS references automatically? That's something perhaps we can work as we finish the project on the light transmission record. Okay. And so in terms of other data sets, translation of these works have been ongoing. So the academic papers on humanistic Buddhism will also play a huge role. Okay. In the future, when we refer to these either scholarly or glossary accuracy, regeneration, or check. And so one of the ways for us to check, to test whether all of these agentic tools are working well is this project, the Light Transmission Record of Venerable Master Hsing Yun and Humanistic Buddhism. Okay, the Chinese edition was published in May this year, totaling 120 million Chinese characters. But we are very confident that with the help of these agentic tools, we will be able to complete the English translation by next year. So quite surprisingly, well, as I tried the agentic tools by injecting the glossary and making sure it actually makes reference to our existing and published scholarly references through Google App Script. Right? The idea is to write the scripts, and as AI and the app performs these tasks alongside the large corpus, I would have to say in the past, if we had to translate all 120 million characters by hand, it would take us up to 3 to 5 years. But when we employed the app script, well, the core version would be the MCP version, right? And whichever version we use, it actually took me less than 3 weeks, including trialing and erroring, for AI to generate a quality first draft for me to check and then hand over to the editorial team at the HBC. So they've now begun to really go through about 1/3 of volume 1, right, since May. And so it's actually going on quite well. And so you can really see the difference in progress and the works we really have to put in. But of course, at the end of the day, it still has to come back to human editorial work for us to ensure that the final quality is actually ideal. And so step 7, topic clustering and cross-referencing, we're going to leave it to the future. So when you ask a question, hopefully this tool will be able to really summarize and organize your desired data sets. For example, if you ask, what is Master Hsing Yun's perspective on Buddhist management? Right? So perhaps in this number 7 step, it's going to shorten the time we spend on research, but still bring forth to us what we desire under the environment of RAG, for us to just work within the text cluster or the corpus of Master Hsing Yun or the Guangshan canon. Okay? And last but not least, at the end of the day, a chatbot that interacts with you, perhaps can kind of guide you in your research, your translation, your reading, and maybe just general query directions. Yeah. So overall, these 8 steps are what we are looking to integrate under the whole idea of agentic AI in translating large Buddhist corpuses. And we're very happy to really share with everyone that we're making pretty good progress. We're really able to produce large sets of translated data at publication quality every year. And so that working side by side means we're creating content as we develop the tools, so that in the future our AI tool will give us very reliable and supportive outputs to speed up our process in sharing the works of Venerable Master Hsing Yun under the topic of Humanistic Buddhism. Yep. So why are we doing this? Of course, technology, right, and computation and AI is very important. But after all, what we need to do is to realize the dream of Venerable Master Hsing Yun. That is, everything we do is to propagate the Dharma. And everything we do is to make sure that this Dharma shared helps enhances our life and help us solve our problem in a more mindful and a more wise way. And so still a lot of work to do, but we're very happy to share our ideas and progress today. And I look forward to your feedback and questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang, for sharing with us the work on agentic AI at IHB and on the work involved in two of your projects, the Guang Dictionary English Translation Project and translation of the complete works of Venerable Master Hsing Yun. So if you have any question for Venerable Miao Guang or any of the speakers who will talk, please type your questions in chat and we'll ask you to ask the questions when it comes to our Q&A session. Venerable Drolma began studying Buddhism in 2007 with Master Plano Sai of the Methodist University, who is also the founder of the Buddha-Dharma Association in Brazil. Venerable Lobsang Drolma became a monastic in 2011, holding a bachelor's and master's degree in history from Unicamp, and in 2018, Venerable Lobsang Drolma completed formal monastic training, and in 2023 obtained a PhD in religious studies from the Methodist University of Sao Paulo. Currently, Venerable is working as a teacher in a public school in Campinas, also serving as the president and a volunteer teacher at the Buddha-Dharma Association. So today, Venerable Lobsang Drolma will be speaking on this topic: how do Master Hsing Yun's Humanistic Buddhism and Sister Dulce's Catholic charity practice articulate volunteerism as a spiritual practice, highlighting its role in fulfilling religious principles? So, Venerable Lobsang Drolma, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you all for having me today. I'm gonna say a few things about this subject that was part of my finishing master's in Buddhist studies. So I decided to put this subject together, the Venerable Master Hsing Yun work and this Catholic saint that is very important here in Brazil, since the University of okay, we have some issues. The University of Kelaniya and the Buddha-Dharma Center of Hong Kong was suggesting to us the importance of putting together some kind of subject that was trying to decide or help understanding some kind of situation. And here in Brazil, we are having, again, a lot of problems with poor people. So we have this Irmã Dulce that is important for the identity of Brazilian. And I was at the time studying Humanistic Buddhism, and the works of Venerable Master Hsing Yun came to my attention, and especially one work, one text came to my attention that is about being a volunteer. So this is how I put this research question, and I was inclined to understand the contribution, the potential of interfaith dialogue that is very important here in Brazil, since we have a majority of people who is which is Christian, and this dialogue centered in compassion, service, and social transformation. So also, I was trying to find for this the similarities and differences between these two religious figures from distinct contexts, also inclining to the thought that perhaps in Brazil the works of Venerable Master Hsing are not that acknowledged, and I think this is a problem. It needs to be acknowledged, since it's so inclined to the very subject of working towards people and putting understanding of the Buddha teachings. So I'm sorry about my English. It's a little bit broken tonight, but I promise I do understand everything that you say, and in time it gets better. Okay, I'm sorry. So what I did was putting together these two works, Buddhism and Volunteerism, of this work here of Venerable Master. And this book came to be published in 2000, like 2 years ago. It's not a book of my sister Dulce per se. Is a lot of letters, personal letters, in which she talks about being a volunteer. So I was reading this book from Venerable Master about being a volunteer, and then I was trying to find how this Brazilian saint for the Catholic Church came to understand the same subject. So in the thing I wrote, the paper I wrote, I put together some kind of research references about Venerable Master, aiming to show this the background of his Master Tai Shu, and also how this ideas of social engagement, the idea of everything that you all know about Humanistic Buddhism is very important. The institutional reform, the social engagement, the elimination of superstition. This I came to learn because I was learning about it in the University of Kelaniya and also the Buddha-Dharma Center of Hong Kong. And then what I put into my attention was all the institutions that were created, and I think Venerable before who just talked is a very important example of this continuing work of his inspiration and work. So promoting school, hospitals, and so on and so forth. And I took this picture from your website. And why did I took this kind of example? This kind of example because also they are very important social work. So they all are counting on people being volunteer. So in this book, I don't know if you are familiar with it. Yes, and I think it's very interesting that Master was putting together such a huge work and such important institution, and then he came to write about being a volunteer. And I don't think this is very common. I think this is a very specialized way of thinking. So in this book, he's saying about being a volunteer as a spiritual practice, as a form of altruism, as a form of serve, as a way of being rooted in the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, joy, generosity, and being guided by virtue and joy and not personal gain. And also, especially as part of the Bodhisattva path. So, in this book, he mentions that being a volunteer leads to personal transformation, spiritual realization, social benefit, and especially this is a very important way of practicing Buddhism because it shows to the practitioner about interdependence, weaken selfishness, make someone more attentive to the social justice and community bonds. Okay, that's best. Don't know what's happening now. I'm sorry. So about the Bodhisattva idea of being a volunteer, a form of making merit, and this is all from the book, okay? Wisdom, cultivation, and direct the realizations of Buddhist values. And on the other hand, he also mentions that all the enlightened beings and all the bodhisattvas, they are all working in a very volunteered way. And also Buddha starts teachings as a volunteer act and kept taking care of the students, kept taking care of the monks in a very volunteer way. So this is all come together with the Buddha practice, the Bodhisattva practice. Must serve like a horse for all sentient being with complete devotion. He also lists 8 benefits of being a volunteer, like self-confidence enhanced, encourage personal growth, build friendships. So this is an important thing because it transforms in a community way, create affinities, develop skills and talents, boost sense of responsibility, puts balance between theory and practice, brings mutual benefit for self and others. And then after that, he mentions, and I'm thinking about people being leaders for volunteers, how to inspire volunteers. So you have to not tell people what to do, but show that you care, like encourage people, support people, uplift people, have empathy towards people, and offer advice, motivation, and purpose, being a volunteer to the volunteers. So this is the part of the book where he finishes, and I think this is the core of all. Now talking about Sister Dulce, she's a little bit older than him, and I don't know if you're familiar to Brazilian story background, so I'm gonna say a little bit more about it. So the context, she was working in Brazil from 1930 from 1990 in Salvador, Bahia, the state of Bahia. And this time is very, very poverty, very extreme poverty, violent social inequality, military. It was a time of very violent government. The state often ignored poor. We had a lot of people in the streets, homeless, sick, children, and so on and so forth. Sister Dulce was inspired, as other people in Brazil at the time, by the Catholic social doctrine. This is the names, these lines here, the documents for this doctrine, and Sister Dulce was very inspired by that, but she never mentions that like in a way very clear. She also engaged in social works, began her mission in a chicken coop. This is literal, okay? So because, okay, she didn't have a place to put the poor people. So she was invading places to make this. And at some point she was invading the chicken coop of the convent. And then people realized they had to help her because she wouldn't stop. And then she tried to start a social work, and she founded the Obras Sociais of Irmã Dulce, that is social works of Irmã Dulce, and building shelters, schools, hospitals, centers for people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol. And eventually she became the largest philanthropic complexes in Brazil. And she was also very, very reliant on volunteers, donations, and personal sacrifice and faith. And she always talked about faith. This is the book. And in the letters, she talks to a lot of different people, relatives, novices, people who are giving money to the work. She even writes a letter to the president in Brazil because eventually she became famous. And she was always trying to mention something about it's hard, but let's do it. And this is a spiritual way. We have caring to give. We have to take care of the poor. She was always saying things like that. So she embodies a practical theology based on action. She's always talking about action. She never says a lot of doctrine. She's always saying about giving herself to others. So when she talks, her prior motivation is deep faith in God and service to Christ. In her letters, she says how concerned she is about the mission and how it's important people to continue what she was doing. She didn't have a lot of people to rely at the beginning, but until her death, she was worried about that. She always taught something about unity, forgiveness, because people need to be living in peace in the community, and also personal renunciation. So faith for her is a very important thing, because when she says something about the Bible, she's always mentioned that the poor embody Christ, and mention this passage of the Bible, this quote from the Bible. I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. Whatever you did for this, or least of my brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. So she was saying, I see Christ in the poor. This is her motivation. Faith was her inner strength, sustaining her mission despite what? Poor health, because she was very sick since the beginning, lack of resources, and all kinds of obstacles like the bureaucracy. In exchange for the material help, she often offered people, I will pray for you. She even mentioned to the president, I pray for you to be here. And now that you are present, please help us. We have poor people to take care of. So for her, volunteerism is a Christian vocation. For her, is an expression of faith also, is a personal sanctification and a social transformation. But before everything, it's a Christian faith, act of faith, and a divine calling requiring commitment and self-giving. So in both traditions, we have the word faith, but in Buddhism, we have the sadasrada, that is better translated as trust or confidence. According to what Master Asanga, it involves firm conviction, serene joy in goodness, aspiration for spiritual goals. Faith is not blind, but a mental clarity that enables insight and practice. The practitioner is their own refuge. So this is about faith. Okay, so here I'm talking, this is a reference I use that is from Theravada tradition, because Kelaniya and this university, they are Theravada, okay? I have other references to make, but Asanga is not Theravada, okay? In the Catholicism, when Sister Dulce speaks of grace necessary to serve the poor, faith is central and personal, but this is about God. She always says something about dogma, the church, the scripture, the Bible. And as a consequence, faith is a supernatural grace given by God. It's not something people can cultivate. It's something people can be next to when the actions show the faith. So it's about actions and about faith. And also its belief is a responsive act of towards divine revelation. Faith is a gift and a human act, combining reason and will. So, for both, we have volunteerism as a profound spiritual expression, service as a way to transform the self and society, and for Venerable Master, we have the act of leaving the self behind. Creation of volunteer communities and public institutions and everything that comes with it. Both say that inner peace and joy come from selfless actions. And that about differences, motivational core, faith in God for sister, and ethical compassion for master, for Venerable Master. The basis in terms of doctrine, we have theological and practical and philosophical in terms of Buddhism. And vocabulary for Dulce, we have grace, divine service, and for Master, we have interdependence, virtue. So I put this image for comparing motivation. We have compassion, interdependence, humanity, faith in God, Christians, service, and then we have what volunteerism, being a volunteer is, spiritual path for Master, vocation and expression of grace for sister, creating institutions for both, with the difference for Master, as he were creating temples. Key text, we have Bible and personal, we have the theoretical ones and the personal letters for sister. Main focus, we have altruism and community, and faith and sacrifice for Christian. Model of virtue, bodhisattvas, he always talking about bodhisattvas. And for Catholicism, we have saints and Jesus Christ. Central vocabulary, we have humanity, virtue, compassion, and for her, faith, again, grace and forgiveness. So as my final words, this research in no way whatsoever is trying to say that all religions are the same, but I was trying to show how these so different traditions have some kind of compassionate action and ethics as a main thing, central object. Being a volunteer as a shared ethical spiritual praxis capable of sustaining interreligious dialogue. Both figures, both ones show that faith and practice are inseparable when compassion becomes action. And a final word, in an age of inequality and conflict, compassion-based volunteerism, rooted in different faiths, maybe offers a universal path toward peace and justice. And this is my references. And that was it. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm sorry about the blood in your ears with my terrible English.
That is not a problem, Venerable Lobsang Drolma. Thank you very much for a very comprehensive comparative analysis of voluntarism according to the Christian and the Buddhist perspectives. And I would just like to tell everyone that Venerable Lobsang Drolma is joining us at a place where it is 2 a.m. I'm not sure about you, but at 2 a.m. my brain does not work, although I may be awake at that time. Without further ado, we'll go to our third and final speaker of today's meeting, and that is Venerable Zhi Yue from Fo-Guang-Shan Institute of Humanistic Buddhism. She's the English editor of the colossal Fo-Guang Dictionary English Translation Project, and she's going to talk to us Well, on this topic, critical analysis of current English translations for Renjian fojiao within the context of Venerable Master Hsing Yun's propagation. We invite Venerable Zhi Yue.
All right, so thank you so much, Xiaoyan and Venerable Juewei, for inviting me to present at today's SIG interest group. So my presentation for today is critical analysis of current English translations for the term Renjian fojiao within the context of Venerable Master Hsing Yun's propagation. And so this was something that I presented at the end of 2023 in Singapore and is part of an ongoing work that I've been working on as a side project. Side project to my work at the Guang Institute of Humanistic Buddhism. So first of all, a brief introduction on why I had interest in this topic. My main research question for this topic is how do the English translations Humanistic Buddhism and Engaged Buddhism align with the original Chinese doctrine of Renjian fojiao? And the reason why I had this question, it came up when one of the scholars attended a symposium at Foguangshan and asked Venerable Miao Guang, who's here with us today, why do you use Humanistic Buddhism as a translation for Renjian fojiao? I completely disagree with it. And so Venerable Miao Guang, she just said that, well, I also raised the same question to Venerable Miao Guang, and she said that she's not really sure where this translation, Humanistic Buddhism, came from, but our predecessors used it, so we can just continue to use it. So that question, that incident really spurred me to look into why Renjian fojiao is translated as Humanistic Buddhism. And secondly, right now, especially in English academic world, there seems to be an equating, like a conflation of engaged Buddhism and humanistic Buddhism. Like the two terms are used as synonyms, and I wanted to see if that's really true or not. So that's part of the motivation for my research. So according to Jianming Kwang's research in 2020, there's at least 15 English translations of Renjian fojiao that are currently being used. As you can see, that there's an absence of a universally accepted English translation for Renjian fojiao. Because if there were, then there wouldn't be a need for 15 different types of translations. And so we can see, for example, we have Renjian Buddhism, World Buddhism, Worldly Buddhism, Buddhism in the human world, Buddhism of the world, mundane Buddhism, living Buddhism, temporal Buddhism. And of course, we have humanistic Buddhism and engaged Buddhism. Also popular Buddhism, human Buddhism, earthly Buddhism, etc. So what can we see is that presently, humanistic Buddhism and engaged Buddhism are two of the predominant English translations for Renjian fojiao. Now, the issue is that if there's a discrepancy in translation because all of these different Buddhist organizations are using different translations to talk about the same Chinese concept of Renjian fojiao, then what it's going to do is confuse the Western audience who's not acquainted with this historical context of Chinese Buddhism. So also in the academic field, there's a lot of debate between the suitability of whether we should call it humanistic Buddhism or engaged Buddhism. And so currently, as of the academic environment, trying to define Renjian fojiao is largely a Chinese academic scholarship trend at the moment. So in English field, it doesn't seem to focus so much on the term Renjian fojiao, but more on the actualization and the sociological impacts of it. So that's why part of my research is to fill in this gap. So my hypothesis and finding is that the terms humanistic Buddhism and engaged Buddhism share a similar historical root, but as time goes by, it has grown into two distinct philosophies, and we shouldn't regard it as equivalent. And as of this moment, humanistic Buddhism is still currently the best term to convey Renjian fojiao as propagated by Venerable Master Hsing Yun. Okay, so the second part of my research is trying to define what exactly is Renjian fojiao from a linguistic and doctrinal overview. So Marcus Bingenheimer has also previously tried to discuss this translation of Renjian fojiao. Now, what is really interesting about these four characters in Chinese is that the Chinese is quite ambiguous. Like it doesn't establish the relationship between Renjian and fojiao. So we know fojiao is Buddhism. That is a standard already, but we have an issue on how this Renjian relates to Buddhism. So according to Bingenheimer, Renjian fojiao can be approached in two ways. The first being descriptive and the second being normative. So what do we mean by descriptive? It means you're simply just describing this type of Buddhism, right? You're just saying, oh, this is Buddhism of the human realm or Buddhism in the human realm. It doesn't convey anything about like you should do this, it ought to be this, etc. But the second way of interpreting the relationship between Renjian and fojiao is saying like there's a normative expectation, like there's a teaching involved, like it's saying that Buddhism should be, it ought to be for the human realm. So understanding the distinction between these two interpretations explains why some proponents of Renjian fojiao will say like, oh, we're not really promoting new ideas about Buddhism, but we're just talking about the nature of Buddhism as taught by Shakyamuni Buddha, right? So understanding this nuance helps us understand how to translate these four characters into English. So for my research, I'm going to examine whether this Renjian fojiao is from a descriptive interpretation or from a normative interpretation. So then the third part is about the historical evolution from Rensen fojiao to Renjian fojiao. So this term Renjian fojiao actually began with Master Tai Xu in the Republic of China era. Now, the first term that Master Tai Xu actually used was Rensen fojiao. And he wanted to raise this issue of like human life Buddhism as a response or an antidote to the funerary rites of Chinese Buddhism. So Chinese Buddhism is moving towards rituals, superstition, and funeral rites. And so what Master Tai Xu wanted to emphasize was Buddhism for human life, for the living, right? To counteract that state of Buddhism that was very preoccupied with funerals. But then there was a small time where he began to use Renjian fojiao between 1930s and 1934. So there was these 4 years in his writings where he used Renjian fojiao. But then from 1934 onwards, he continued to use Rensen fojiao. And people of the movement also use Rensen fojiao. And this term, Renjian fojiao, didn't really show up until the last decades of the 20th century. Now, of course, we can say that there are other figures like Master Ying Sun who's involved, but for the sake of my research, I'm going to focus on how Master Xing Yun defines it, because we're talking about Renjian fojiao in his Dharma propagation context. So one of the things I was curious about is how come we are going back and forth between Rensen fojiao and Renjian fojiao, and we see these two masters, Master Taishi and Master Xing Yun, trying to go back and forth between Rensen fojiao and Renjian fojiao to describe it in a Chinese linguistic sense. So why exactly did Master Taishi opt for Rensen fojiao rather than Renjian fojiao? As we can see, he was thinking about it, but he ultimately decided on the use of Rensen fojiao. He seemed to feel that Renjian was too narrow and too human-centric. So there was this notion that Renjian was too close to the Confucian idea of the human realm that well, the Confucianism related everything to the human realm and denied the existence of other realms, which are also part of the practice in humanist or in Buddhism. So what Master Taishi wanted to do was to set apart Buddhism from this Confucian narrowness. So he discontinued the use of Renjian because he felt that it could be misinterpreted as being limited solely to the human realm. Now, on the other hand, what did Venerable Master use? So his early works actually followed Master Taishi in using the words Rensen fojiao. So during his early works in the 1980s, he actually declared his lifelong mission to the promotion of Rensen fojiao. And in a letter to devotees actually emphasized that the goal was for lay practitioners to, live fulfilling lives with their families and communities while adhering to this Rensen fojiao. And so in multiple speeches in the 80s, he continued to really promote Rensen fojiao. But then an interesting thing that happened was from 1996 onwards, there's no more talk of Rensen fojiao. It became Renjian fojiao. And Renjian fojiao became the exclusive term associated with Fo Guangshan's initiative. So we can see the transitional period in the 1987 to 1999, there's a shift. And we see him using both, but from 1996 onwards, it became just Renjian fojiao. So what is Venerable Master's doctrinal interpretation of Renjian fojiao? And he says, we cannot claim that Renjian fojiao belongs solely to Master Taishi just because he advocated Rensen fojiao. Nor can we say that the sixth patriarch promoted Renjian fojiao just because he once said, the Dharma is in the world, enlightenment is not apart from the world. Renjian fojiao does not belong to one person, it should be attributed to the Buddha. So what we can see here is that Venerable Master is really beginning with a descriptive interpretation, saying that, Renjian fojiao doesn't belong to any one particular person. The Dharma is in the world, Buddhism is in the world. But then he begins to emphasize the normative interpretation. So we see that he says, when we talk about Renjian fojiao now, it is mainly to ensure that Buddhism is not confined to mountain monasteries or solely to monastics. Buddhism should enter society, families, and the hearts of every individual, allowing everyone to feel that believing in Buddhism can provide a foundation for living, a sense of purpose and order, and feelings of joy, honor, and bliss of Dharma and meditation. Therefore, Renjian fojiao will become a beacon of light and a line of hope for billions of people in mainland China in the future. So what we see here is in his writing, it prescribes what Renjian fojiao ought to be, what Renjian fojiao should do in society. And Renjian fojiao should be a beacon. It should enter society. So it suggests that this is an ideal. It's a normative call to action of what Buddhism should be. Okay. And because for the sake of time, I'm not going to read this entire quote. But here he says, like, in regards to Rensheng fojiao, the so-called human life speaks of humans and aims to solve human problems first. But Renjian, on the other hand, is not just about humans. It includes pigs, horses, cattle, etc. The rivers, the earth. So therefore, the Renjian fojiao that we advocate in terms of life includes all sentient beings. Okay? Renjian is very broad. Even heaven and hell are within the human realm. So here is quite interesting because Master Taishu didn't like Renjian because he felt it was too narrow, that it was too similar to Confucianism. And now Master Xing Yun is saying that, oh, Rensheng fojiao is too narrow because you can just only emphasize human life when we're talking about everything related to the human realm, not just the physical human realm, but the mental human realm as well. So we can see that both masters are trying to broaden the scope of what this Rensheng or Renjian fojiao is trying to encompass. And we can see that as the use of Rensheng fojiao and Renjian fojiao, it's started off as being a description, but then as we move on through the years, it becomes increasingly broad and normative. So it's capturing not only the literal meaning, but also their evolving concept and cultural connotations. So this is especially important to my next part, which is to really think about the current English translations of this Renjian fojiao. Where did this Renjian fojiao, humanistic Buddhism, even come from in the first place? So the first time the term humanistic Buddhism ever appears is in 1904 in June in New York Times. And it's trying to describe Japanese in wartime and how they observe international law. So this was trying to describe the Japanese style of Buddhism. This is the first time that humanistic Buddhism appears. Then the first time that it actually became associated with Renjian fojiao was in 1925, where Sylvain Lavie, in his writing, he examines the quote-unquote Humanisme bouddhique of India. So it was also Lavie who was the one who invited Master Taishu to France to deliver a speech in 1928. So we can see that Lavie, he already used this humanistic Buddhism in his other writing to describe Buddhism of India. And he's also the one inviting Master Taishu. So I suspect that there is a connection between the use of humanistic Buddhism and his invitation of Master Taishu, but currently I don't have enough evidence to fully support this hypothesis. But it's something that I'm curious about. Then the first definitive association with Renjian fojiao or Rensheng fojiao actually began with Venerable Master Xing Yun in 1987 in his book, How to Be a Foguang Buddhist, and publicly at 1988 in a Sakyadhita conference proceedings, where he referred to his propagation of the Dharma as quote-unquote humanistic Buddhism. So we can see, based on Google Ngram, where humanistic Buddhism and engaged Buddhism really took off. So we can see engaged Buddhism shows a steep rise from the 1980s through the 2000s, whereas humanistic Buddhism consistently stayed lower than engaged Buddhism. It hasn't shown the same increase. But I suspect that the use of engaged Buddhism also has other reasons, which I will touch about a little bit later. So humanistic Buddhism, humanistic is derived from humanism. In this broader sense, it signifies a shift from supernaturalism to naturalism, from absolute reality to living reality. So what it does is that it's trying to say that these earlier concepts of humanism existed within religious contexts, but religious humanism in this etymological origin does not reject God, afterlife, or the supernatural. So the present discourse in about humanism in the academic field now is predominantly focused on secular humanism, but largely omits the religious dimensions. Now, what this all means, it means that the term humanism right now carries with it a lot of cultural baggage because of the nuances that the concept has carried over time. So this is something to keep in mind whether we want to use humanism or not in our translation. Now, in terms of engaged Buddhism, I'm just going to touch upon this briefly, is that it's mainly associated with Thich Nhat Hanh, and associating it with Renjian fojiao should be approached with great caution because there's a strong political nuance with it. So especially during the Vietnam War, so Master Taishu's writings had been influential to these Vietnamese monastics, and Thich Nhat Hanh actually used some of Master Taishu's ideas in his writings, but he didn't actually use the word engaged Buddhism until there were his disciples to translate it. So this term, engaged Buddhism, was not used by Thich Nhat Hanh or other Vietnamese Buddhist reformers, but appeared in his translation of his work in 1965. And we suspect that it was inspired by the existentialist ideas of Sartre and Camus because there was an increased availability of Western literature in Vietnam in the late 1950s. So we can see that this term engaged Buddhism is also very influenced from Western philosophy of the idea of engagé, meaning a responsibility to confront political issues, a commitment to addressing issues of power, coercion, and justice that are intrinsically political. So what's interesting is that Thich Nhat Hanh actually didn't say that engaged Buddhism should be involved in politics, but because of the Vietnam War and its use in Western media, it became closely related to politics. And then also self-identified engaged Buddhism, engaged Buddhists have aggressively redefined the term. So last part, now I'm going to analyze whether we should use humanistic Buddhism or engaged Buddhism in the context of Venerable Master's teachings. So the advantages of translating Renjian fojiao as humanistic Buddhism is that it focuses on human experience or relevance to life and distinguishes it from other forms of Buddhism that may be perceived as more ascetic, monastic, or otherworldly, and emphasizes individual responsibility. Okay, so here Venerable Master says that no religions in this world, not even Renjian fojiao, can solve people's problems for them, etc. So here is trying to underscore that the humanistic principle that all individuals are responsible for their own lives and destiny. So this idea of humanistics stresses the importance of human agency and self-reliance. Okay. Now, the disadvantage is that it could lead to misunderstandings about the spiritual and religious dimensions of Renjian fojiao because of the word humanism. And there's limited and cultural historical reflection that may not show Renjian fojiao completely in its entirety for someone who's not familiar with the Chinese history. And so engaged Buddhism often implies active confrontation with politics and social injustice, but Venerable Masters and Renjian fojiao focuses more on harmony and applying Buddhist principles to everyday life without necessarily engaging in direct political activism or confrontation. So he himself even says that I do not think that monastics should engage in political activities. So monastics should show concern, but not interfere with politics. So hence, conclusion, my current preference or from my research is that the preference for humanistic Buddhism by Fo Guangshan appears to be the current best translation. But there are limitations to this humanistic Buddhism because of the baggage. Now, the way that we should try to mitigate this issue is to really redefine what it means and to understand the changing nature of language and evolving interpretations of Renjian fojiao within the religious communities. And one of the things that we need to really emphasize is to make sure that we are clear about separating it from secular humanism and clarify what this humanistic Buddhism is in terms of the original Chinese meaning. Okay, so thank you very much. That is my presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Zhi Yue, for sharing this on this very interesting topic. You started from one single question, but you have managed to pull together a diverse range of resources and presenting it in a very systematic and also succinct and clear way. Congratulations. I hope you will be able to find time to one day publish your work, and then we can cite it when we need to refer to why we call it Humanistic Buddhism when we write papers in the future. And on Sunday mornings, Sydney time again, we have the communities of practice. If you're interested to just take half an hour of your schedule to join in this wonderful community sharing on humanistic Buddhist values and also stories, please feel free to look up this link on screen now, which I will also post in chat later, to join our communities of practice. So in July and August, Venerable Juewei is leading the discussion on wisdom. And if you are thinking about studying at Nantian Institute, we have scholarships on offer for those who are enrolling in the Applied Buddhism and Humanistic Buddhism courses. The next round of scholarship will close on 19th September, so feel free to check this out on the NTI website. On 14th of October, we will have our third meeting of this HBSIG in 2025, and speaking to us will be Royce Nedden from University of Adelaide and Joseph Frawley, who is our project engagement officer at the Humanistic Buddhism Center in Nantian Institute. Yes, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns to raise, please feel free. And Venerable Lobsang Drolma, do you know if the letters by Sister Dulce are available in English?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it would be very interesting. I think this is the book here. I think no, I don't have it here, but I think it's not available because it's a new book. it just came out from like 2 years ago. And it's very interesting because it has all her letters in her life until the time of she passing away, like few days before, and until since her childhood when she was aspiring to be a nun. So it's very, very interesting. I would suggest to them at some point.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Maybe I just go a bit. Sorry, Venerable Zhi Yue. Sorry if I pronounced your name right. Because I practiced with Plum Village for about like 6 or 7 years, and I learned a lot about engaged Buddhism from our master, Thích Nhất Hạnh. And when we talk about political issues, well, he kind of explained that if we kind of raise our voice to the, how to say, violence and injustice in the society, so he encouraged people to raise the voice. The thing is, like, I'm not sure if it is possible to raise the voice also in Humanistic Buddhism in a way like we don't disturb or we don't get involved into political matters or not. So I would like to know more about how we're going to raise our voice in a peaceful way and in a way like we call it Humanistic Buddhism. So that's really kind of resonate in me when I listen to the talk, when you compare two terms together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your question, Ms. Hai. Yeah, okay. So, like you said, the Venerable Master does advocate for raising a voice against injustice. So, for example, he himself has penned a letter regarding, political elections in Taiwan in terms of like advocating for harmony and advocating for non like bipartisan issues. But the way that he does it is not through, taking up arms, etc. But he does it in a way that he's still fulfilling his role as a Buddhist monastic, showing concern for society, but he's not actively saying that I'm going to run as a politician. So that's what the Venerable Master is saying when we don't engage directly in politics, but we should still show concern because after all, we are all citizens of a nation, whether we be monastics or not, and the government does enact laws that will affect its citizens and humans. And being monastics, we need to show concern to all sentient beings. So in that essence, Buddhism does show concern for politics. Now, the reason why I say that engaged Buddhism is more involved with politics is not necessarily saying that Thich Nhat Hanh advocates for more involvement in politics. That's completely not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the translation engaged Buddhism, this engagé, has that political nuance, which may or may not reflect what actually Thich Nhat Hanh is advocating. It's just simply that the use of it in English now has been so politically charged that during the Vietnam War, we see people saying, "Whoa, we are engaged Buddhists," and monastics doing self-immolation. There's lots of protest, etc. And they use the name engaged Buddhism. And when Thich Nhat Hanh actually first proposed, his brand of Buddhism, his teachings, he never actually used this term engaged Buddhism in Vietnamese or in his works. It's only through translation that this term engaged Buddhism began to be used. And so then this use of engaged Buddhism began to spin out of more than just what Thich Nhat Hanh himself defined, but what society defined it for this term. So that's what I was trying to clarify, is that this term engaged Buddhism has now been so politically charged that if we just use it to describe Renjian fojiao, there might be associations with like Vietnam War, or like associations with a different strand of Buddhism. That's not entirely what Renjian fojiao is talking about. So that is more of the point that I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable. It's really great to listen to this and also know more about how we're going to get involved and, kind of give some hands to the social issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question and your answer. I see a raised hand. That is George, and that will be the last question for this meeting. And after that, I will invite Venerable Juewei back to close the meeting for us. So, George, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've been teaching. I'm a professor in a Catholic university, been teaching here for 35 years, and I have seen how Catholicism has been on a decline in terms of popularity among young people, especially the millennials today. But I've seen a pickup in interest among the young people when the kind of Catholicism that we have here in this part of the Philippines has become more engaged. Taking on advocacies and even going into certain forms of activism for the good. And I was wondering whether it will be just a little time for Guang, no, to follow suit and become more engaged as they try to bring about the pure land in this planet. I can just see that maybe generations from now, there might be a tendency to become more engaged politically. I don't know. That's just my thought. I would like to hear your opinions.
So would one of the venerables like to take up this question?
I'm not familiar with Catholicism, so maybe this is a question better for Venerable Lobsang Drolma.
Yeah, I was thinking about that here in Brazil, we also felt the falling of the number of Catholic public, and we were waiting for the time when people will have the numbers, and we have time to time the numbers of each religion. And we were expecting the time where evangelical people will be more than Catholic. And as a surprise, that didn't happen now. And also it was like having a slow pace, a slower pace than before. And here in Brazil, I can't talk about Brazil more than everything, but we have the situation in which the people from the Protestant view and evangelical view, they are involving themselves a lot of politics. And some specialists are mentioning that this is precisely the reason they are making a slower pace right now, because a lot of people, they don't want this. They don't want this political involvement, because people are taking like all evangelical agenda and transforming into a new thing, and not responding to their goals, to their wills. So we have this like a break in between the public view, the public goals, and the political goals informed by the evangelical agenda. They're different. They start to become different, and sometimes they get away with the all spiritual thing. Like they're like not inspiring them anymore. So I think that this thing about being social engaged is more inspiring people when people are working together, like in a community, like in the cities, in the villages, in the institution, more than in the political places. I think this, because this critics also tends to come into the Catholic people. Catholics should not be talking about politics. Not like, it's just like the idea of the Buddhism in terms of humanistic Buddhism. Talk about, but not involved. I think people like better when this is like this.
Thank you, Venerable Lobsang Drolma, for your sharing. Venerable Juewei, please.
Yes, I want to thank our speakers today. We are building that community right here, the Humanistic Buddhist community that embraces these teachings. It's not just an external theory I can see. Your interest in using academic rigor to help in that contemplation. So thank you so much. You are actually answering the questions of many of us. Venerable Zhi Yue, that was such a fantastic presentation, so much. I can see how it has improved from the first time you presented at HBSIG until now. It's a complete presentation that we hope you can publish. And as Xiaoyan say, that we can cite. And Venerable Lobsang Drolma, thank you so much. This interreligious comparison is extremely precious, and we look forward to seeing more of such dialogues here. And Venerable Miao Guang, you have given us so much hope that all this research that Venerable Lobsang Drolma and Venerable Zhi Yue are doing, all the other scholars, with the Agentic AI, with that speedy access into the huge canonical texts and the Venerable Master's corpus, will be able to integrate and quickly write new papers, fill in the gaps in scholarship, identify and fill in those gaps with reliable resources. So this is the platform for any kind of work that you have today that you would just like to share. Any point in your research from the very beginning to the very end is a very friendly space for you to put together some of these thoughts, present to a community of friends, invite conversations, not just within here, but also afterwards. You can private chat one another and get your contact information. This is what the special interest group is about. So we look forward to hearing from Roy and Joseph in October. I'm sure they'll have exciting talks to share. So everyone, I look forward to seeing you back again in 3 months and join in any of our activities in between. Keep well, everyone, and thank you, Venerable Lobsang Drolma, for sacrificing your sleep, and to Venerable Miao Guang and Venerable Zhi Yue for sacrificing your lunch, and to everyone else too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.